The Aspiring Dreamer. Introduction to Elijah Harper. Elijah Harper had always seen the world in color. Even as a child growing up in Baltimore's Sandtown-Winchester neighborhood, he found beauty in the mundane, the rusted iron fences, the faded murals on brick walls, the patchwork of mismatched rooftops. Armed with a pencil and a cheap notebook, Elijah would sketch the life around him, the vendor selling fruit from a cart, the kids playing basketball in a cracked lot, the elderly woman sitting by her window, watching the world go by. Art was more than a pastime for Elijah, it was his refuge. In a world that often seemed chaotic and indifferent, his sketches provided order and clarity. His talent was evident from an early age, and by the time he was in middle school, teachers and neighbors alike praised his skill. But while his artistic ability set him apart, it also made him acutely aware of the limitations imposed by his circumstances. Opportunities for young Black artists in his community were scarce, and the world beyond felt distant and unwelcoming. Early influences. Elijah's mother, Olivia Harper, was his greatest supporter. A single parent working as a nurse, Olivia instilled in him the values of resilience, self-expression, and hard work. Despite her long shifts and limited means, she made sure Elijah always had access to art supplies, even if it meant sacrificing her own needs. "You've got something special, Elijah," Olivia would often say as she watched him sketch late into the night. "Don't ever let anyone make you feel like you don't belong. Your art is your voice, use it." Olivia's encouragement fueled Elijah's passion. She introduced him to the works of Black artists like Jacob Lawrence and Romare Bearden, showing him that people who looked like him had carved their places in art history. Those stories became his anchor, reminding him that his voice mattered, even if the world didn't always listen. By high school, Elijah's talent had blossomed into something remarkable. His teachers entered his work into local competitions, where he often won first prize. Yet, despite the accolades, Elijah's dreams of becoming a professional artist seemed daunting. The barriers of race, class, and access loomed large, and the art world felt like an impenetrable fortress guarded by gatekeepers who didn't see value in stories like his. Facing rejections. Determined to break into the art world, Elijah built a portfolio of his best work, portraits that captured the resilience of his neighbors, landscapes that told the story of his community, and abstract pieces that conveyed his inner struggles. Each painting was a piece of himself, raw and unfiltered. With his portfolio in hand, Elijah began approaching galleries, hoping to find someone who believed in his vision. But the rejections were swift and cutting. "This isn't what our clients are looking for," one gallery owner said, barely glancing at his work. "You need formal training," another remarked. "Collectors won't take you seriously without an art school pedigree." Each rejection chipped away at Elijah's confidence, but the most disheartening came from the prestigious Lenox Gallery. Owned by Victor Lenox, a titan of the art world, the gallery represented the pinnacle of success for emerging artists. Elijah managed to secure an appointment, convinced that if Victor Lenox saw his work, he might finally have a chance. Victor's mockery. The Lenox Gallery was everything Elijah had imagined: grand, imposing, and filled with carefully curated pieces that exuded wealth and exclusivity. Walking through its polished halls, Elijah felt a mix of awe and apprehension. This was the world he longed to be part of, but he also knew it was a world that often dismissed voices like his. Victor Lenox greeted Elijah with a calculated smile that didn't reach his eyes. Dressed impeccably in a tailored suit, Victor radiated an air of authority. He gestured for Elijah to sit and began flipping through his portfolio without a word. Elijah's heart raced as he watched Victor's expression remain unreadable. When Victor finally closed the portfolio, he leaned back in his chair, his gaze sharp and critical. "You've got passion," Victor began, his tone measured. "But passion doesn't equate to professionalism. This work, it's raw. And not in a good way." Elijah swallowed hard, trying to steady his voice. "I believe it speaks to real experiences." Victor smirked. "Real experiences are fine for community art fairs, Mr. Harper. But galleries like mine deal in refinement. This is amateurish at best. My advice? Stick to street art, it might be a better fit for your style. The words stung like a slap. Elijah managed to thank Victor for his time, but as he left the gallery, his humiliation was palpable. It wasn't just a rejection of his work, it felt like a rejection of his identity, his story, and his worth. Turning point. That night, Elijah returned to his small apartment, his portfolio tucked under his arm. He placed it on his cluttered desk and stared at it, Victor's words replaying in his mind. Amateurish. Not refined. Stick to street art. For hours, he sat in silence, grappling with his emotions. But as the night wore on, despair gave way to determination. He thought of his mother's words, "Your art is your voice, use it." Elijah realized he didn't need Victor Lennox's approval to be an artist. The rejection, as painful as it was, became a catalyst. He resolved to prove Victor, and the entire establishment, wrong. He would carve his own path, no matter how long it took or how hard it was. Elijah began painting with a renewed sense of purpose, pouring his emotions onto the canvas. His art became bolder, more personal, and unapologetically raw. He no longer painted to impress gatekeepers, he painted to tell his story. At the same time, Elijah started researching alternative ways to share his work. He stumbled upon social media platforms where artists showcased their creations to global audiences. The idea sparked something in him. If traditional galleries wouldn't open their doors, he would create his own platform, one where his art could be seen and appreciated by the world. With nothing but his talent, his resilience, and a borrowed smartphone, Elijah Harper began the journey that would change his life forever. Rising through rebellion. Exploring new avenues. After the humiliation at the Lenox Gallery, Elijah Harper resolved to take control of his narrative. He realized the traditional gatekeepers of the art world weren't the only way to reach an audience. With a borrowed smartphone and the barest understanding of social media, Elijah created an Instagram account, which he named @Stories in Color. He began posting his work online, using his apartment's walls as a makeshift gallery. His captions told the stories behind each piece, tales of his upbringing, the resilience of his community, and his journey as a Black artist fighting for recognition. The posts were raw, heartfelt, and unpolished, but they resonated with a modest audience. At first, growth was slow. Elijah's photos were poorly lit, and his hashtags were scattered. But he was persistent, experimenting with better lighting and composition, and engaging with his followers. Little by little, his audience grew. His small but supportive community encouraged him, leaving comments like, "Your work is so powerful," and "Thank you for sharing your story." The power of authenticity. One evening, Elijah decided to share a deeply personal painting titled "The Boy Who Waited." It depicted a young boy sitting on a stoop, his eyes filled with a mixture of hope and longing. It was a piece inspired by Elijah's own childhood, a reflection of the waiting he had endured, for opportunity, for validation, for his dreams to take shape. Elijah accompanied the post with an emotional caption. "This painting is about waiting. Waiting for the world to see you, waiting for doors to open, waiting for a chance to prove yourself. I've been told my work doesn't belong in galleries, that it's not refined enough. But art, to me, isn't about refinement, it's about truth. This is my truth." The post struck a chord. Within hours, it began to gain traction, shared widely by users who connected with its message. By the next morning, Elijah's account had gained thousands of followers, and The Boy Who Waited had gone viral. People from around the world left comments sharing how the painting resonated with their own experiences. "This reminds me of my childhood," one user wrote. "Your work is incredible, don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Elijah was overwhelmed by the response. For the first time, he felt his art truly being seen and understood, not through the lens of elitism, but by everyday people who found pieces of themselves in his work. Media attention. The viral post caught the attention of Lydia Kessler, a renowned art critic known for championing fresh and underrepresented voices. Lydia was scrolling through Instagram late one night when The Boy Who Waited stopped her in her tracks. There was something extraordinary about the painting, the vulnerability it captured, the rawness of the emotion, and the authenticity of the artist's voice. Intrigued, Lydia delved into Elijah's account, spending hours poring over his work. She was captivated by his storytelling, his willingness to lay bare his experiences, and the way his art created connections across cultural and geographic boundaries. Lydia reached out to Elijah the next morning. When Elijah received Lydia's message, he could hardly believe it. Her column in the Vanguard, an influential art publication, was a launchpad for many emerging artists. They arranged a phone interview, during which Elijah shared his journey, his inspirations, and his struggles with systemic barriers in the art world. A week later, Lydia's article was published under the title, "The Artist Who Paints Truth, Elijah Harper's Journey to Authenticity." She called his work a bridge between lived experience and universal emotion and hailed him as a rising star. The article catapulted Elijah into a new realm of visibility, drawing interest from collectors, galleries, and fans across the world. Victor's dismissal. As Elijah's reputation grew, the art world began to shift. Collectors who had once focused exclusively on polished, highbrow works were now seeking pieces with emotional depth and raw authenticity. Emerging artists like Elijah became symbols of a broader movement challenging traditional norms. Victor Lennox, however, dismissed the trend with characteristic arrogance. "This obsession with raw and emotional art is a phase," he told his staff during a gallery meeting. "People love a sob story, but it doesn't make for enduring work. Real collectors will come back to what truly matters, refinement and mastery." Victor's dismissal masked a growing unease. His gallery's attendance numbers had been declining, and several prominent collectors had begun turning their attention to the very kind of art he derided. Yet Victor clung to his belief that the Lennox Gallery set the standard, refusing to acknowledge the shift in the industry. A fortuitous connection. One day, Elijah received an email from a high-profile broker representing an anonymous buyer. Victor froze mid-sentence, the color draining from his face as he recognized the young man standing before him. For a moment, the room was silent, the air thick with tension. "Elijah Harper?" Victor finally stammered. "You're the artist?" Elijah nodded, his gaze unwavering. "I am." Victor opened his mouth to speak, but closed it again, clearly at a loss. Elijah stepped closer to the painting, his voice calm but firm. "It's fascinating to hear your thoughts on my work, Mr. Lennox. Especially since you didn't seem to have much faith in it, or me, the last time we met." The buyer's eyes widened in realization. "Wait, you know each other?" Elijah turned to them, his expression measured. "Victor and I have met before. He told me my work was amateurish and suggested I stick to street art. Seems his opinion hasn't changed much." Victor's face burned with embarrassment. "Elijah, No need to explain," Elijah interrupted. "Your thoughts were clear." The buyer crossed their arms, their tone sharp. "Victor, you failed to mention that this artist is the one you dismissed so easily. And now you're profiting from his work while insulting him? That's shameful." Victor stammered, desperately trying to salvage the situation. "This is a misunderstanding." It's not a misunderstanding," Elijah said, cutting him off. "It's a reflection of how you've treated countless artists. You've built your career on belittling others, but you can't silence everyone." Public fallout. The confrontation didn't remain private for long. The buyer, an influential figure with a significant social media following, shared the story online. "Today, I witnessed something extraordinary," they wrote. "An artist dismissed as amateurish by Victor Lennox turned out to be the very creator of the work he was trying to sell. The arrogance and hypocrisy on display were staggering." The post went viral, sparking outrage across the art community. Collectors, artists, and critics shared their own negative experiences with Victor, painting a picture of a man whose elitism and arrogance had alienated many. Headlines like "The Gatekeeper Falls," "Victor Lennox Exposed," and "Elijah Harper's Triumph Over a Broken System" dominated art blogs and media outlets. Meanwhile, Elijah's profile soared. The story of his confrontation with Victor resonated with audiences, reinforcing his image as a trailblazer challenging the status quo. His social media following exploded, and his paintings became symbols of resilience and authenticity. Victor's collapse. The fallout was swift and unforgiving. Prominent collectors began withdrawing their support from Lenox Gallery, unwilling to associate themselves with Victor's tarnished reputation. Artists who had previously sought his validation severed ties, choosing instead to work with galleries that celebrated diversity and inclusion. Victor's attempts to control the narrative only made things worse. Public apologies fell flat, and his attempts to pivot toward championing emerging talent were dismissed as insincere. The once thriving gallery became a ghost town, its grandeur replaced by an air of desperation. Within months, Victor was forced to sell off parts of his personal art collection to cover mounting debts. His name, once synonymous with prestige, became a cautionary tale of how arrogance and resistance to change could destroy even the most established careers. A new dawn for Elijah. As Victor's world crumbled, Elijah Harper's success continued to soar. His work was featured in prominent galleries around the world, and his pieces commanded record-breaking prices. But more than that, Elijah became a symbol of hope for artists who had been overlooked and dismissed. Despite his newfound fame, Elijah remained grounded. He saw Victor's collapse not as a personal victory but as part of a larger movement to dismantle the exclusivity and elitism that had defined the art world for too long. And while Victor Lennox's fall was complete, Elijah Harper's journey was just beginning, a journey that would redefine the art world and inspire countless others to find their voices. Redemption and renewal. Victor's humble plea. Victor Lennox sat in the dimly lit remnants of his once prestigious office, staring at the piles of unpaid bills and foreclosure notices on his desk. The grandeur that had defined Lenox Gallery was gone, replaced by silence and an overwhelming sense of failure. His name, once synonymous with exclusivity and high art, had become a cautionary tale of arrogance and downfall. Facing bankruptcy and with no allies left in the art world, Victor realized there was only one person who might listen: Elijah Harper. The very artist he had dismissed and mocked now stood as a beacon of success and transformation in the industry. It was an irony Victor couldn't ignore, but he knew he had no other choice. Swallowing his pride, Victor reached out to Elijah with a carefully worded email. In it, he admitted his failures and asked for a meeting, expressing a genuine desire to make amends. To his surprise, Elijah agreed. When the day came, Victor walked into the Phoenix, Elijah's newly established gallery. The space radiated warmth and creativity, filled with vibrant works by emerging artists. It was everything Lenox Gallery had failed to be, a place where art and community thrived together. Elijah greeted Victor with a calm but guarded demeanor. "Victor," he said, his tone neutral. "I wasn't expecting to hear from you." Victor hesitated, his voice trembling with vulnerability. "Elijah, I've lost everything. My gallery, my reputation. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm here to ask for a second chance. I want to change. I want to be better." Elijah's forgiveness. Elijah studied Victor carefully. The man who had once radiated confidence and superiority now stood before him humbled and desperate. It would have been easy to dismiss him, to turn him away and remind him of all the pain he had caused. But Elijah believed in redemption and the power of transformation. "You've spent years tearing people down," Elijah said, his voice steady. "Why should I believe you're ready to change?" Victor's gaze dropped to the floor. "Because I've seen what happens when you don't. I've hit rock bottom, Elijah. I don't want to be the person I was anymore. Let me work here, not as a gallery owner, but as someone who learns. I'll do whatever it takes." Elijah considered Victor's words. He had built the Phoenix on values of respect, inclusion, and second chances. If Victor was sincere, perhaps this could be an opportunity for both of them. "All right," Elijah said finally. "I'll give you a probationary role here. But understand this gallery isn't about ego or elitism. It's about people, their stories, and their art. If you're here, you'll need to embrace that fully." Victor nodded, his voice filled with gratitude. Thank you, Elijah. I won't let you down. Victor's transformation. Victor's first weeks at the Phoenix were humbling. Elijah assigned him to basic tasks, helping artists set up their installations, assisting with events, and welcoming visitors. For a man who had once dictated the trends of the art world, it was a stark adjustment. But Victor approached each task with quiet determination, eager to prove himself. As he immersed himself in the gallery's daily operations, Victor began to see art through a new lens. He met artists from diverse backgrounds who shared their stories of struggle, resilience, and triumph. A single mother using painting to cope with grief, a refugee expressing their journey through sculpture, a teenager channeling their identity into bold, vibrant murals. Each encounter chipped away at Victor's old biases and replaced them with admiration and empathy. Over time, Victor transformed. He became a mentor to younger artists, offering constructive feedback without the condescension that had once defined him. He advocated for their work, using his connections to help them gain opportunities he had previously denied. The staff and artists at the Phoenix, initially wary of Victor's presence, began to trust him. They saw a man who was genuinely trying to make amends, someone who had learned the value of humility and the importance of lifting others up. One evening, after a particularly moving exhibition showcasing the works of formerly incarcerated artists, Victor approached Elijah. "I spent so many years focused on perfection," he admitted. "I thought art was about status, but it's about connection." "I see that now." Elijah smiled. "Growth isn't easy, Victor. But you're getting there." Elijah's vision. While Victor rebuilt himself, Elijah continued to expand his vision. The Phoenix became more than a gallery, it was a movement. He opened satellite locations in underserved communities, ensuring that art was accessible to everyone, regardless of background or resources. Elijah also launched the Harper Foundation for Emerging Artists, which provided grants, mentorship programs, and residencies for underrepresented voices in the art world. The foundation became a beacon of hope, empowering countless artists to pursue their dreams without fear of rejection or exclusion. Beyond his work with the foundation, Elijah became a leading advocate for systemic change in the art industry. He pushed for policies that promoted diversity and equity, challenging institutions to rethink their definitions of fine art and who deserved a platform. Elijah's efforts sparked a cultural shift. His story inspired young artists worldwide, proving that talent and authenticity could break down even the most entrenched barriers. Through his work, the art world began to transform, becoming a space where all voices could be heard and celebrated. A new chapter. By the end of Victor's probationary period, he had become an integral part of the Phoenix. Elijah offered him a permanent role as an advisor, a position Victor accepted with gratitude. Though he no longer sought the spotlight, Victor found fulfillment in supporting artists and helping them navigate the industry. One evening, as the gallery hosted a retrospective celebrating its journey, Victor stood alongside Elijah, watching as visitors admired the art on display. "You've built something extraordinary here," Victor said quietly. Elijah smiled. "We've built it, Victor. Together." The two men, once adversaries, now stood united by a shared belief in the transformative power of art. Their journey was a testament to the importance of redemption, humility, and the enduring impact of resilience. For Elijah Harper, the work was far from over. He continued to dream, to create, and to build a world where every artist, regardless of their background, could find their voice. Legacy and reflection. The rebirth of a gallery. Victor Lennox's former gallery had once been a symbol of exclusivity and elitism, its cold marble floors and stark white walls designed to intimidate as much as inspire. But under Elijah Harper's leadership, it became something entirely different. Renamed the Phoenix, the gallery was reborn as a vibrant, inclusive space that celebrated diversity and creativity. Gone were the sterile displays and unapproachable atmosphere. The walls of the Phoenix were alive with color and stories, each piece of art a testament to resilience, hope, and transformation. Local artists painted murals in the gallery's entryway, their bold strokes welcoming visitors with warmth and energy. A section of the gallery was dedicated to interactive workshops, where artists taught their craft to aspiring creators of all ages. Elijah's vision for the Phoenix extended beyond the art on its walls. He wanted it to be a hub for community engagement, a place where anyone, regardless of background or resources, could feel seen and valued. Monthly open mic nights, community art projects, and free entry for all ensured that the Phoenix remained a beacon of accessibility and inclusion. The grand reopening of the Phoenix was a momentous occasion. Artists, collectors, and community members gathered to celebrate its transformation. Elijah gave a heartfelt speech, dedicating the gallery to the voices that have long been silenced, the stories that deserve to be told, and the artists who refuse to be forgotten. Victor's redemption. Victor Lennox, once a symbol of the gatekeeping establishment, had undergone a remarkable transformation. Working at the Phoenix had opened his eyes to the importance of humility, inclusion, and the power of art to connect people. He had transitioned from a critic to a mentor, using his extensive knowledge of the art industry to guide emerging artists. Victor's redemption was evident in the relationships he built with the artists at the Phoenix. He became a trusted advisor, helping them navigate the complexities of the industry while championing their unique voices. His critiques, once biting and dismissive, were now thoughtful and constructive, aimed at empowering rather than diminishing. Victor also began hosting seminars and panel discussions, sharing his story as a lesson in the dangers of arrogance and the necessity of change. His willingness to admit his past mistakes inspired others in the art world to re-evaluate their own biases and practices. Victor's transformation is a reminder that it's never too late to grow, one artist said. He's proof that even the most entrenched systems can evolve. Elijah's global impact. While the Phoenix thrived as a local hub for creativity, Elijah's influence extended far beyond its walls. Through the Harper Foundation for Emerging Artists, he provided grants, residencies, and mentorship programs to underrepresented voices around the world. His work ensured that artists who had been marginalized by traditional systems could pursue their dreams without fear of exclusion. Elijah also became a prominent advocate for systemic change in the art industry. His speeches at universities and international art symposiums challenged institutions to rethink their definitions of fine art and expand their platforms to include diverse perspectives. Under his leadership, major museums and galleries began adopting policies that promoted equity and accessibility. Elijah's efforts sparked a cultural shift. His story of resilience and triumph inspired countless artists to embrace their authenticity and reject the notion that they needed to conform to succeed. Young creators around the world saw in Elijah a role model who had broken down barriers and built a new path forward. A closing reflection. On the 10th anniversary of the Phoenix's reopening, Elijah Harper stood in the gallery's main hall, watching as visitors wandered through the space. The walls were alive with art that told stories of struggle, hope, and triumph. A group of children sat in a corner, eagerly painting on large canvases as a local artist guided them. Elijah walked slowly through the gallery, taking in the vibrant energy that filled the air. He paused in front of Eclipsed Dreams, the painting that had sparked his confrontation with Victor Lennox. It now hung in a place of honor, not as a reminder of past struggles, but as a testament to the journey that had brought him here. Victor approached, carrying 2 glasses of champagne. "You've built something extraordinary here," he said, handing Elijah a glass. Elijah smiled. "We've built it, Victor. Together." As the evening continued, Elijah found a quiet moment to himself. He stood in the gallery's central atrium, surrounded by the hum of voices and the glow of creativity. He thought of his mother, whose unwavering belief in him had laid the foundation for everything he had achieved. He thought of the rejections, the ridicule, and the moments of doubt that had once made him question his path. And he thought of the artists whose lives had been transformed because he had refused to give up. Raising his glass, Elijah whispered a quiet toast. To resilience. To community. To art. As the sounds of laughter and conversation filled the air, Elijah Harper stood at the heart of the Phoenix, a gallery that was more than a space. It was a symbol of hope, transformation, and the enduring power of storytelling. His legacy was not just in the art he created, but in the lives he touched and the change he inspired, a testament to the beauty of second chances and the limitless possibilities of perseverance. ChatGPT